Alright, so here's the fleet. You can see my skills. Mostly those skills are the ones that are important to use the Cryoflamer. Then I always use best of the best and cybernetic augmentations to do some mercenary spam, because then I use that trick of officer management to respec and get all the officers that you want. This fleet is basically a fleet around Wolfpack Tactics with phase ships, so 2 Harbingers, then 1 Afflictor and everything else pirate Afflictors, and then on top of that a squadron of 10 support Condors that use Swarm Launcher and Wasps. As a disclaimer, I am using 2 mods that do change the balance. I'm using 1 mod that applies target analysis and its elite skill on fighters. You can find that mod easily on the forum, and I'm also using a mod that I wrote together with Bugatti, I think, that basically just increases the peak performance time of small ships, just to make this bearable, because I'm going to show you fights against really high deployment point fleets, and the 2 biggest problems with using this fleet that I build are explosion radius when an enemy ship goes out, because they basically also explode your ships, because they tend to be really close due to their striking weapons. And the second one is basically just running out of peak performance time. You will see me actually engaging full assault mode many times, just to avoid the ships running out of peak performance time completely, and start flaming out. At some point in the fight, you just want to clear up all the major threats and leave the remainder to be cleaned up in full assault mode, so that you can do it fast enough. You were able to see the loadouts, so I'm going to talk a little bit about them. So basically, by the way, the strategy for going against the different types of enemies, so for the Transcendental manifestation, basically you need to do the opposite of what you would do with the non-phase fleet. You actually do need to go and kill the tendrils as fast as you can, because anemic elimination will just disable all your weapons even when you are phased. So don't try to avoid them and go just directly for the eyes like you would in a normal fleet. If you want to use phase ships against the Transcendental manifestation, I advise you to basically try to clean up all the others, not ships, but units that will target you with anemic elimination, disable all your weapons and your engines. And whenever you see an opening for the eye, just go there and try to kill it as fast as possible, obviously. Alright, so that's the main strategy for this particular enemy. I usually try to ignore them all and leave it as is. Here I actually didn't put the ignore order, sometimes I do. But basically, because it's not fast enough to chase your ships, and they don't tend to clump together that much after the initial opening moments of the fight, I tend to leave it for later. You will notice also that in every fight, lots of ships will have to be recovered at the end, because most of the time it's because they are caught up in the blast radius of whatever ship exploded near them. So going into the loadouts, the flagship is a Harbinger using double Cryoflamer, and you have an antimatter blaster in the middle slot, because it's really useful to punch through armor. So it's not going to be the main source of damage, those are going to be the Cryoflamers, but it's super useful to just crack the armor before you erase the hull using the Cryoflamer. Mining lasers in the back basically just prevent weird AI behavior if I ever am not piloting it, because I think the AI detects that it has. You see here the Harbinger was disabled because of this thing. I always try to put mining lasers in slots that would otherwise be empty, because I think they help the AI not do some wonky stuff. Then for the other Harbinger here, it's a double Void Blaster loadout. Also double mining lasers in the back slots, and in the center slot, initially I had it empty. I'm using S-model expanded magazines for the Void Blasters, so I thought that there would be good synergy with the IR auto lance, but I'm not entirely sure if I shouldn't just leave it empty again, because I think it makes, even with an aggressive officer, it makes the ship not engage inside the desired Void Blaster range sometimes, because it has the extra range provided by the IR auto lance. But sometimes I also see it working well, so I'm kind of torn between using it or not. But for all these fights, that's how I'm using it. For both Harbingers, I'm for all ships, for all the face ships here, I'm S-modding heavy armor, and the officers all have the helmsmanship skill, which means that they offset the penalty for S-modding heavy armor. I personally found that using the heavy armor on this ship really increases their survivability. In the Harbinger, while I'm piloting it to do some fancy maneuvers and target the blind spots in the enemy ships, I found that the auxiliary thrusters were still necessary even though I had the helmsmanship skill. So the other Harbinger also has that one as well. Then non-S model automated repair units and resistant flux conduits. Then I only have one regular Afflictor, which is the one using 2 antimatter SRMs. And that one also ends up dealing tons of damage most of the time. Because its officer has elite missile specialization and phase anchor together with that. It's by the way, all the phase ships have phase anchor. And it's a really good design, but obviously you need to rely on the Omega drops, so I only have one because I have 2 antimatter SRMs. By the way, here I'm going against 2 second strike fleets from Threat. It's just so that I get 4 fabricators. I was having a hard time finding a third strike fleet with 3 fabricators, so I found these 2 together, and I'm doing that fight, which in theory should be harder than the third strike with just 3 fabricators. Light needlers on all the Afflictors. Then the pirate Afflictors are all 2 light needlers and 1 antimatter blaster. And yeah, you could see it in the initial screen for the loadouts. That was the best loadout that I found. I even tried using some of them with Rift Lance in the middle. It helps with point defense, but the extra hit strength from the antimatter blaster is really worth it in my opinion. I did lots of tests where I even consoled in enough Rift Lances to fill all the pirate Afflictors, because it's the same ordnance point cost, and honestly the loadout using antimatter blaster is a lot better. Then finally, my favorite part of this fleet is actually the squadron of Condors that are supporting. Basically, the Condors are just built to maximize what you can get from the swarm launcher with a fragment swarm and secondary fabricator, and then just 2 mining lasers and wasps. The wasps are super effective against threat, are effective against remnants when you find some of the Ordos that flood you with flash bombers. It's not the case in the fight that I'm going to show you, but it really helps a lot. They do a surprising amount of damage to smaller ships, and because I'm using the target analysis applies to fighters mod, it also helps doing damage to other things, so the Condors are really cool. I don't think the swarm launchers from 10 Condors are enough to become game breaking, and like the well-known Buffalo marked second strategy, where you basically flood the field with swarm fighters. These are not in enough number that they completely saturate the enemy, but they are already, you can already feel that they are very good at supporting the rest of it. Because of that, it becomes really fun, because you don't feel like you are completely that you are out of options when you are piloting your flagship, that you are never completely surrounded by enemy ships and you don't have any kind of support whatsoever. The mass flood of swarm fighters and wasps really helps you feel like something in your fleet has got your back while you are doing crazy. It's really cool. It's super fun to pilot in this fleet, in my opinion. It's, so far, I think it's one of the ones I've had the most fun building and fighting other fleets with. The strategy for doing this threat fight, to me, is basically trying to go forward and surround the entire enemy fleet as fast as you can. Whenever you have some smaller ships that go out of the main agglomeration in the middle of the main ball, you give target orders so that your ships try to target them more aggressively. And using your flagship, in this case the Harbinger, you just, every time you see an opening for a fabricator, go in and try to do as much damage as you can. Try not to overstay and just come out. The base strategy should always be to engage the system and shoot your antimatter blaster charge to crack the armor, and then just leave the cryo flamers in auto fire, and they will destroy the hull, and do this a few times. If you are not being surrounded by enemy assault units, or there are not that many overseer units disrupting you when you go into phase mode, you can just keep blasting the shields with the cryo flamer, because the shields will get saturated super fast. But usually you do get surrounded by assault units and overseer units, so I prefer to just go in and out. You see that the auxiliary thrusters allow you to do these kinds of maneuvers, even though you might be piloting an Harbinger with an S model heavy armor. Otherwise you wouldn't be able to do these kinds of switcheroos. Yeah, for the rest of the threat fights, you will see that mostly you should always be careful about assault units as usual, but this kind of fleet is actually good at dealing with them, because the Afflictors are just generally an incredible ship, as everyone knows, and they can easily escape the line of fire of the Void Blasters, even when the assault units are in. Otherwise, just keep going, and then you will find that at some point, if you have enough fabricators filled against you, that you will probably start reaching the end of the performance time. And so the goal here is to try to be fast, sweeping the fabricators from the field. Then you can just engage in full assault mode, and it should be fine. But because of the blast radius, you will always lose some ships. I think it's inevitable with this fleet. I've had a really hard time fighting against high DP fleets. not having that happen, because they go in to strike with the antimatter blaster. The Harbinger, for example, that I am piloting, because of even with the integrated targeting unit, it's super hard not to get caught up by the blast radius. So I always do the thing where I shoot the cryo flamer, or it's in auto fire mode, or whatever, and I try to, if I think it's close to exploding, I try to engage phase mode right as the projectile is traveling towards the fabricator or whatever ship you're trying to destroy. Always trying to engage that with the timing to try to escape the explosion, because especially if it's a capital ship, you will always get. You see, I did that here. I'm not sure I was able to. Okay, just by a smidge. All right, and then after the fabricators are off the field, just engaging. Okay. Yeah, but later. Yeah, maybe right after I put it to leave the field. The AI was super smart and let itself explode after I went through the trouble of actually trying to escape the explosion. Fabricator. Yeah, then in full assault mode, they are okay. They should be okay. Some of them will get caught up in the explosion radius to see how close they get because of the antimatter blaster. But yeah, you see all the combat readiness reports start coming in. So if you don't engage full assault mode, they will start flaming out and you won't be able to finish the fight correctly. Or if you do, you will suffer triple the losses or something like that. Okay. I think for this fight, that's it. Okay, now we're gonna go against 3 Ordos, 1,000 something deployment points. This is the fight that that you need to hurry up the most before you start running out of peak performance time. It's the one where you can feel that effect the heaviest. Even though I am using that mod that increases the peak performance time of these ships, if I don't hurry up and do very aggressive eliminate orders, it happens. So my strategy for this fight is always to avoid the capital ships. Not because they are extremely dangerous, but to let them just go off on their own and leave themselves exposed, trying to chase other ships without having lots of escort ships. Then I try to go in and eliminate them as fast as I can. Novas are especially vulnerable to this strategy because of their system and because of how aggressive they are, and because they only have mostly frontal weapon arcs. And you see what I'm doing here, I bait them in with the avoid order from the entire fleet, and then they just come in, and then you just circle around and start cracking. And that's it. Always try not to overextend. trust the Wasp wings to finish off ships. For example, here it's almost at 0 hull. I know the Wasps will just make it explode, and that's fine. Then, whenever some destroyer ships, like some Lumens or some Brilliants, start approaching the Condors, try to make your fleet eliminate them as fast as possible to avoid losing the Condors, because if they get caught, they are just a sitting duck. And that's the main strategy. And try to make your fleet engage enemy ships as fast as possible and eliminate them as fast as possible. I think in this fight I also used the full assault mode at some point, because I was already running out of peak performance time during the last waves. And the Void Order at the top basically prevents the Afflictors from trying to surround the fleet and then getting caught up by surprise when a Radiant enters the field and basically just blasts them into oblivion. So having that Void Order right at the peak of the map somehow helps prevent that. Yeah, so strategy is the same. Just go in, engage the system. If it's a ship that you think it's a high value target and has decent armor, just engage the system, open up with Antimatter Blaster, and let the Cryo Flamer on auto fire mode just melt the hull completely. Yeah, sometimes you need to babysit the ships to see what they are doing. Yeah, see there, I was just looking. That Harbinger, as I said, I'm not sure if the IR auto lance is actually messing with its behavior. I thought that with the aggressive officer it would still engage the Void Blaster always at range. Sometimes the combat results seem to show that, sometimes it seems like it was... the ship didn't do that much damage at all. Other times it performs well. Still torn on that. But yeah. Yeah, that's basically the strategy. Let your fleet be decently aggressive. Try to clean up as many ships as you can. See, it's staying at range for tolerance instead of engaging. So, yeah, maybe I should just take out that IR auto-lance and replace it with something else. If there's any low OP thing that I can mount there, I think an antimatter blaster wouldn't really make that much sense there, even though it's one more OP, but the range mismatch with the Void Blaster is too big. Then I thought about a kinetic blaster, but it's too flux hungry and it's even shorter range than the Void Blaster. So you get that the high explosive weapon outranges the kinetic weapon, so it doesn't really seem like a particularly good option to me. Maybe I should just leave it open. I don't think it can handle 3 Void Blasters. Even because it's too high in OP. Yeah, you see any ship that starts going off by its own, try to put eliminate orders on it, try to protect the support squadron, the Condors. Just pull them back when you see they are going off on their own, a bit too close to the enemy fleet, and if you see some enemy ships are getting dangerously close to any of them, try to get your other ships to go and engage them. The Afflictors are super fast, so they can do this effectively. And then whenever you find one of the capital ships on its own, just try to, like here, just try to find a weak angle and exploit that. Okay, so trying to do it quick. Okay, it's the range. That's it. That's why I always try to avoid the blast phases. Yeah, I think that's the strategy for this fight. Nothing much more to say. And at the end, you will also see the detailed combat results. That's it.